Welcome back to another episode of I Wish They Knew, a show where we share big ideas that deserve more attention in about the time it takes to enjoy a cup of coffee. I'm Joe Hirsch. Today's wish comes from Robert Glazer. Robert is the founder and chairman of the board of Acceleration Partners, a global partner marketing agency, and the recipient of numerous industry and company culture awards. Well deserved. Robert is also the best-selling author of 5 books, most recently Elevate, and he's also the host of the Elevate podcast. Great show. Recommend you check that out. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
So what do you wish more people knew?
I wish more people knew themselves. I think really understanding themselves, what they like, what they don't like, what makes them tick. I think that's a foundation of their leadership and and understanding their values and just making better decisions for their life.
So the experiences that lift us in our personal and our professional lives, you describe them as being impacted by 4 particular areas, 4 capacities that, when brought into balance, really transform a person in their work, in their life. Can you give us a drive-by of those 4?
Sure. Yeah. So picture a ball and there's 4 quadrants. And if these things grow in tandem, the ball gets bigger and has more mass and it's rolling, really fast down the hill. If 1 or 2 of those quadrants shrink and the other ones are big, it's bouncing like a mess. And what I have seen is that these 4 quadrants, spiritual, intellectual, physical, and emotional capacity, make up the process of sort of getting better for individuals. Spiritual capacity, it is not religious. It's about understanding at a high level, like who you are, what you want most, and the standards that you want to live by. I think for most of us, this is clarity around our core values. And then, some of our strengths and weaknesses would really kind of be enough to surmise that. Once we know who we are and what we want at our core, intellectual capacity is how you improve your ability to learn, think, plan, execute with discipline. To me, this is like your personal operating system. Like, okay, so how do I get better? How do I do it faster, better, and with less energy? Because it's not about more, right? The expansion of when you have a better software, you can execute a set of commands against hardware using less energy and resources, not more. Physical capacity is your health, well-being, and physical performance. I think we all know what this looks like kind of when it's diminished. And then the last and often the hardest for a lot of people, because it sort of starts moving from the inner realm to the outer realm, is emotional capacity. And that's how you react to challenging situations, your emotional mindset. And I think it's a lot to do with the quality of your relationships and which relationships you choose.
Okay, so spiritual, intellectual, physical, and emotional.
I think they build upon each other, right? I know who I am and fundamentally what I want. Therefore, I know how to sort of get better and what I want to learn. I want to do that. I understand the value of maintaining my physical and mental and physical capacity because I see how important this journey is. And then I need to kind of think about who I want on my team and not on my team and how I react to the things that I'm working on and the things that are going on as I sort of continue on that journey. I could give you all sorts of examples of like what happens when one is missing. For example, if you don't get spiritual capacity right, but you nail intellectual, physical, and emotional, you're very likely to climb a mountain, get to the top and be like, crap, I just spent 20 years climbing the wrong mountain. Like, I don't even want to be on this top.
Yeah. And so putting those into balance, super important. Let's start with a deep dive into some of these, beginning with the spiritual. So you talk in the book a lot about purpose driving that sense of progress, but uncovering that purpose for a lot of folks can be challenging. It probably starts with a good sense of inner tuning, like self-reflection. But for those who may struggle with that, where do they start?
Yeah, I talked a lot about this in Elevate, and it wasn't until a few years later that I had taken the process that I built and that we ran with our company leadership team to sort of scale. But I'm like, look, figuring out your core is not that easy. So I've written a lot about it. I've posted sort of these 6 questions you can start, but I have a course that walks people through this. And it starts with like asking a bunch of questions, like a lot of assessments, and looking for sort of commonalities around time in your life when things have gone really well and you've felt engaged and time was slipping and things that were really frustrating. And if you look across a bunch of dimensions and then you start thinking about things that really have bothered you, you start to notice some patterns. And then there's some ways to word those values in ways that are meaningful and actionable for you. So you can put them on your desk and you can say, look, I have a big decision to make. Like, am I making this in alignment with my values or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So values clarification, knowing what you stand for, what you believe in.
Yeah, and even I look, if I walk into a room and I say, "Do you know what your core values are?" 90% of the people, 98% of the people will not. Maybe 1 or 2%. Yeah, I have strong values. Okay, what are they? Well, and then the others kind of look at me like totally, with a blank stare. And that is the degree of sort of difference. I think if you talk to those two people that can articulate all their core values, you do a little dive into their life and their leadership and what they're doing, I think you'll find them achieving at a pretty high level, achieving in what matters to them, not what matters to the external world.
Yeah. So within that intellectual chamber, getting a greater sense of what really drives us is hard to do on our own. It really requires the support of a mentor. And finding those mentors, that's hard. Keeping those mentors, that is super hard. Guy Kawasaki talked about this back on the show. We'll link that up in the show notes. I'm wondering if you have any tips on how to build that relationship with a mentor. And then I guess relatedly, what are your thoughts on choosing mentors? Is it better to choose a single mentor with a broad set of knowledge and expertise, or to really specialize and find multiple mentors who can help you in different areas?
Yeah, there's probably not one right way. I think it depends on what you're looking for and where you're looking for help. I like this sort of, a lot of people have this notion of a personal board of advisors, and there's one who really helps me on the health stuff, and there's one on the work stuff, and there's one on the family stuff. But I think the mentor could be related to where you are in your life. Like, are you having kids and you're trying to figure that out? Are you early in career and trying to become the best in your industry? um, Generally, I think that, mentors and the ones that want to help, they want to see that accountability and that they're spending their time and that it's being used well, right? People start doing that in their life because they think about their second mountain and they want to make an impact and they want to make a difference. And I think if they get the sense that they're spending a lot of time with you and they're repeating things, that's why I encourage in any mentor relationship, when you get off the call, you make a list of what we're going to do by next time. And the first time you get on the next call, you review that. You have that sort of accountability and carry through. But I would shoot over my pay grade in terms of who you almost want someone who's going to say no. And then you need to live up to those expectations that they're really helping you and making a difference, and they can see that.
Yeah. So punch above your weight class, but also offer some sort of return on relationship.
Yeah, look, there are mentors that charge and don't charge, and they charge because they need to allocate their time somehow. But I promise you, they're not doing that. Like, that's not their primary motivation. Their primary motivation is to make a difference, and they want to see that they're making a difference.
Let's get into the emotional bit, because I think for a lot of folks,
this is the
real challenge. Yeah. Would you agree that people with a deep emotional capacity, they have this ability to move on quickly from setbacks, to bounce back even better than before? But it's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, look, the analogy here is that if spiritual capacity is designing the race car, intellectual capacity is building it, physical capacity is testing it on a test track, emotional capacity is what do you do when you drive that car 200 miles an hour with a lot of other cars out there 200 miles an hour, and it may dramatically overperform or underperform the sort of spec on the course, because it becomes how we're interrelating. And I think that this is where people really struggle. They get aligned with the wrong people. Very simply, like, if you're trying to not drink in your life or cut back on alcohol, and your friends are the type of people that go out to the bar 4 nights a week, it's going to be very hard for you to do that. Right. So again, if you move backwards to those earlier principles and you understand that my health is important, then you say, look, I need different friends on a day-to-day basis. I need the ones that are hiking and doing this. And we don't have the willpower to do that. You also see people who really, and I think this has become a societal failure in the last decade with a lot of our identity politics, but you see, like, everything is like some other force that's happening onto me. It's something I can't control. It's, the attribution fallacy. Like, everything that I have good is I'm brilliant, and everything else is bad luck. It's funny how we do that. So what you see with people who have strong emotional capacity is that they know how to react to the things outside of them. They know how to focus on what they control, and they orient themselves more around what they control than the thing that they don't control. And it's so liberating. I can't again, some of this victim culture oriented, I can't just imagine what it's like to live like that, assuming kind of with the story that everyone's out to get you and ruin your life. Like, look, it might be true in some cases. We have a friend who thinks the world's coming to an end, and the stock man, like, man, no one wants to be around this person. Like, it's just they may be right, and we may have some massive depression in 5 or 10 years, but like that's all they want to talk about all the time. And it's not. If that's your mindset, it's very hard to go out and do good things.
Yeah, it's hard to live your life like that. Dan Ariely was on the show a little while back and was talking about the idea of creating almost an alternate story of a villain, a central character who you blame everything on. And I don't know how people get up every day like that.
Look, the reason why people who have had horrible crimes or whatever forgive the person, even though is because they do it for themselves, not for the other person, because the anger and all of that stuff eating them all day long, they just understand that has a cost. This is kind of no different, right? What is the cost? And this is where Napoleon Hill has some great writing, and some people might not like his style or story, but he just has a lot of this stuff was written after the Depression and during the Depression around, how people controlled their thoughts and just started with the little things that they could control and focused on that more than everything that was happening around to them. I always think about COVID and the restaurants, and you had restaurants after who were like, look, we're going home until this thing ends and we're not changing anything, and they all mostly went out of business. And then the other ones that figured out how to sign up for 4 takeout services, get the tables set up outside, sell wholesale alcohol and meals, and they were like, look, we can't control this COVID thing, but like we don't have to sit around and wait for it kick our ass. We got to do something.
Yeah, you always have a choice.
Yeah. I think we conflate the stimulus of initially what happens, which may be out of our control, with a whole bunch of things that happen that are actually in our control. You and I could get in a car crash this morning, and that sucks, and we can't control the car crash, but like our days would go fundamentally different depending on what we did after that. Whether we took up, man, that could be worse, I'm glad I had my insurance, I'm safe, whatever, versus I just start fighting. I'm pissed at this, I go to work, I fight, I lose a big deal. There's a phrase: if you meet an a-hole at 10 o'clock in the morning, they might be an a-hole. If you meet a-holes all day, you're probably the a-hole.
That's good.
So right. Then I get home for dinner, and now I've had the car crash. I fought with people all day at work. I lost. Do you think I'm going to be like a real fun person around? No, I'm going to start a fight with my kids, and I'm just going to blame this car crash. And that's that's a story that, if I followed Joe's day and how Joe reacted to that. So yes, things happen that we don't control, but we overly blame the part of what we don't control than the pieces of it that we do.
You said at the outset that it's kind of about bringing all these capacities into balance, and you can't have one operating with the other not. So for those out there who are wondering how to get started or feel daunted by the prospect of bringing all these chambers into alignment, what do you recommend?
Yeah, look, I think it was James Clear who showed in his book that if you get 1% better each day, you get like 37 times better over the year, the compounding effect. And this is probably coming out in January. This is the month of grandiose New Year's resolutions and full gym parking lots that will be emptying out in the next week. And I think the more you say, I'm going to have this wholesale life change and set your expectations high, and then it doesn't meet it, you quit. I think the more the end of Elevate chapter, I have these little things you can start tomorrow or you can start, a quarter from now. Like you just take one of these things, like you stop having your technology on an hour before bed, or you turn it off, and you start seeing some positive cycles of that. And then it's kind of like the make your bed and the Keystone habit stuff, and you just start seeing some positive outcomes, and then you do more, and then you do more. So I would pick a couple things. Like you could read through the book Elevate, and you could pick one thing you do tomorrow in each of these things, which you'd be like, you know what, that day was better. Like I liked that. I liked picking the 3 things I want to get done in the morning, for work, and making sure those that get done by noon. That's not changing your whole life, but I can promise if you do that for 90 days, you'll see some significant changes in your life. So I much more bet on the person who starts making some incremental improvements than the I'm going to go change everything, in my life, sort of New Year's resolution person.
The book is Elevate, and the author, and he's given me a lift in this conversation here today, is Robert Glazer. Robert, thanks for sharing your wish with us
Joe,
today.
Thanks for having me.